Welcome, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Meme Factory podcast. This evening we have David Bennett, host of Bitcoin and Fame, the podcast. David, if you want to introduce yourself, give a little bit about yourself, please go ahead.
Yeah, David Bennett. I am also None Ya Business on Twitter. If you're following me, you probably shouldn't be. And if you're not following me, fuck you. I'm just done with your ass. So I am the host of the Bitcoin and podcast, which has been on hiatus for about a full week because I got sick. That's not good. It will return. It's a daily news show. There's really not a news show. It's like, I started the whole damn thing because I just wanted somebody to read me the daily news about Bitcoin because I didn't want to read it. So what the hell happened? I am now actually reading on a daily basis the news that I didn't want to read in the first damn place because nobody else was doing it. So I did it, and I'm in next episode will be 503. It's been going on for a little over 3 years now. So
congratulations on that 500th episode. I listened to that one this morning just to hear what you did, and it was absolutely nothing. It was fantastic. Didn't give away anything. Didn't do anything special, and it was the most Bitcoin thing I've ever heard.
Oh yeah, I have a problem with giveaways and contests and that kind of stuff, which is why my podcast sucks. It's got no listeners because apparently the only way that you can get listeners is to give them shit.
No, and your podcast is fantastic. You and Simply Bitcoin are my daily drivers, man. You guys do the news. Really? Oh yeah, absolutely.
Hashtag me too.
Yep.
I appreciate that. I really do. But yeah, if you're coming to my show to get some free shit, dude, I'm broke as a barn mouse. You ain't getting crap out of me. I'm lucky to actually be able to buy beer.
Well, speaking of being able to buy things, I know you haven't seen the show before, but one of the only ways we're able to keep this thing running is that we solicit sponsors, and since we're nobodies, we tell them that our guests are actually going to do the ad read. I don't know if you have access to your Twitter DMs right now, but I sent you the ad copy for this week. If you could take a look at that, and
let's see. I got it. Hold on. I might have to pull it closer.
That's all right.
Dang it.
Just down, girl.
Don't stop.
All right. I got it. So what I'm going to have to do, I'm going to have to switch some stuff around on my screens.
Take your time. This is important for us because we can't continue the podcast unless we actually have sponsorship.
All right. I got the ad read in front of me. I am ready to roll. So I guess I just read it out. All right, let's start this. Hello, this is David Bennett, Bitcoin podcaster and chicken enthusiast. I love my cock, but it wakes me up too early every day, just raging at the sun. Is your rooster making too much noise all the time? Is your rooster constantly hunting and pecking and stomping around all the time? Is your rooster waking you up at the crack of dawn every morning by crowing at the sun, yelling cock-a-doodle-doo when all you want to say is cock-a-doodle-don't? Driving you crazy? Think there's no answer? You're so stupid. There is. Rooster Restrainers. Finally, there's an elegant, comfortable muzzle/restraining harness for roosters. Since I've been using mine, I can't hear fucking anything from the rooster. Is your rooster skinny, one-legged, fat? It doesn't matter because one size fits all. Rooster Restrainers available online at cocksupplies.com at a 10% discount with the promo code Don't Kill That Rooster.
Hey. Nice job.
Hey.
Thank you. I'll be here all week.
Thank you for helping us getting paid.
Thank you.
I think we got a bonus with that one.
You do?
Yeah.
Can I show my cock now?
You anytime
my cock.
No, please.
No.
There it is.
Here's my cock, guys.
That's a giant cock.
That's a beautiful cock.
Thank you.
That's an amazing cock.
Majestic, and I have to notice it's cold also there, and
What?
it's so majestic.
And it's
It-
still big.
Yeah, has
It's
it been eating a lot?
arm length.
It
It's
looks
an
engorged.
arm-length cock. That thing's amazing.
Yeah. No shrinkage.
Thank you. Yep.
Now, David, you and your wife used to be professors, right? Or your wife
No.
still is?
My wife was a professor. She told the academy, and for those not in college, if you go to a university or college or anything like that, all of them together form what's called the academy. And she gave him the finger, said, fuck you. Because I'm tired of your bullshit. I'm tired of the way that you treat people. I'm tired of the money grubbing. I'm tired of the palm rubbing. I'm tired of my daddy knows Senator Sam Houston and you're going to get fired because you made me feel bad. All that bullshit, because that shit actually happens. That shit's been happening for a long time in academia. So now she is going to, I think she's going to go back to tech and teach as an adjunct professor, because she just got done with the whole tenure track bullshit. Now, me, myself, I have a master's degree in science, which does not put me into a situation where I can be a professor. You have to have a PhD in whatever field you're going to get. However, just because you have a PhD doesn't mean you know anything. To wit, there was a professor, and I didn't know him. It was before my time at Texas Tech Health Sciences Center down in Lubbock. I used to work there, and I used to hear all the kinds of stories about crazy bastards. And there was this one guy, full-blown molecular biology professor, not stupid, got pissed because he didn't get tenure and decided to grab a bottle, like a 1 liter bottle of what's called mercaptan. If you don't know what that is, it's the odorant that they put into natural gas to make it smell like rotten eggs. All right. So what you're smelling when you smell natural gas, what you're smelling is the odorant that they put in at, like, I don't know, one part per million, something like that, because it's so strong. He took a whole bottle of this shit, spun the cap off, and walked up and down the halls with his finger over the top in a glove, and was dripping it on the carpet along all the offices. Clearly he got fired, but they had to completely remediate the third floor. This was like 30 years ago, something like that. So just because somebody's got a PhD, don't go believing that they actually know everything that there is. Okay, they know a lot about one tiny thing, right? And that's, in my opinion, that's not well-rounded.
Now, speaking about knowing a lot about one tiny thing, I've heard through the grapevine that you are a bit of a soil expert, and I have no idea what that means or how it relates to Bitcoin, but I'm hoping you're going to help me connect those dots.
Okay, let's connect two dots. Bitcoin and regenerative agriculture and permaculture, which that's where all the soil stuff comes in. So my rabbit hole story coincides with this collision that everybody's seeing with regenerative agriculture and Bitcoin. Because if you haven't seen that collision, you're clearly not on Bitcoin Twitter, because it's been going on for a while. So what I find funny is that before I knew about Bitcoin, I started just consuming mass quantities of YouTube videos and podcasts about, at first it was, God, what was it? It was like, it was not aquaculture. It was like aeroponics, hydroponics. And it wasn't because I wanted to grow dope. It was actually, I actually was like thinking about food and was trying, had heard a couple things and I'm like, okay, well, I'll check it out. And I got captivated by aeroponics and hydroponic technology. And all that is basically growing plants in water and nutrients, and no soil is involved. So, pumps that pump this water, and In aeroponics, it's like a fine mist spray on the roots. And that turned into aquaculture, or was aquaponics, kind of like where you raise fish in the water, and they're the ones that provide the nutrients instead of chemical nutrients. And that became fascinating, like really, really fascinating. And that led me to what's called permaculture, which is a design. It's a design science. It's not a way of gardening. It's a way of thinking about building permanent, working with the earth to build permanence. That's where the perma comes from. Culture, the permaculture part of the permaculture word is actually a collision between permanent and culture, but not permanent agriculture. It's literally means permanent human culture, because you can't have permanence of human culture without food. And so without getting into the weeds of that became fascinating. And it led me to a podcast called the Survival Podcast, which is hosted by a guy named Jack Spirko, who's up in Azle, Texas, somewhere around Fort Worth. And he's a permaculturist, but he's also a survivalist, gun nut, redneck, duck farmer. Right there you go. And I started listening to his podcast, not because I was like interested in survival. That was actually the last part of it that I wanted to get into. It was more about agriculture and regenerative agriculture and soil and why this shit is important and why I should care. I'm not saying anybody else should care. You probably should, but that's your business. I'm not here to point fingers and tell people that they suck because they don't look at soil. That's just me, because I'm a nerd. I'm a geek. All right. So I get into this guy, and by this time I had heard about Bitcoin, not read the white paper. A friend of mine sent it to me. I looked at it, dismissed it out of hand, just like that, like a lot of people do. And then I kept hearing about it, and I kept hearing about it, until finally one day this Jack Spirko guy goes, okay, look, dudes, you're going to have to look at Bitcoin, because this is the way that it's going to go. And I'm like, well, shit, I've heard it from my friends. I've heard it on the news. I've heard about it from this and that. And by this time, Dogecoin had come up, and they were sponsoring that race car. I don't know do you guys remember that?
50.
The race car of Dogecoin? Okay. So it's around that time that Jack Spirko starts talking about Bitcoin. And I go, okay, fuck it. I gotta take a deeper look, because by this time I've been listening to the dude for like 3 years or something like that. And I take a look, I buy some Bitcoin, I get hooked. I circle the rim of the rabbit hole and drop in like a fucking golf ball, and I'm lost forever. And so that was 2015. Oh, right here, bro. That's like I got your Peter. I got your Peter McCormick. Damn it. There you go. Anyway, so I drop in like a golf ball, never to return to normal, to anything remotely approaching normal. I've come to grips with that fact. I'm never coming back. There's no place for me else in the other world. So that's 2015. Here we are. Let's come to 2020. And right sort of at, I'm going to say somewhere around October of 2020, we're firmly knee deep in the COVID crap. All right. And all the bullshit, and everybody's freaking out, losing their mind. And all of a sudden this guy, Untapped Growth, starts talking about regenerative agriculture. And I'm looking at what he's doing, and I'm like, I know all this stuff. This is the world that I inhabited before Bitcoin. Like, what the hell is this guy doing? Am I not the only one that is a geek about soil and how we can change the world by doing the shit that our ancestors did 18,000 years ago? And all the way up until basically the green revolution of chemical fertilizers.
Now,
so
not everybody is familiar with Untapped Growth, so I want to take a minute, and if you can tell everybody what he's doing, just so they understand the context here.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so Untapped Growth it's at Untapped Growth on Twitter. If you're not following him, you probably should. He is starting something that essentially, because I don't know it well enough to, because I'm not going to put words in Untapped Gross mouth, but basically he's building a structure where people that want to raise cows and want to work land are hooked up with people that either have money or have land, and somehow get these guys together to start growing cows on land, eating grass, and doing all the stuff that cows do, which we can get into later if we want to. But cows on land is like the engine of the land. All right. It's like if you look at the earth and all the people that are screaming at the top of their lungs about carbon, oh my God, carbon's going to kill us all. We can get into this one later if we want, but for right now, the people that are screaming the most are the people that want to take the animals off the land. If you do that, you're going to turn the entire fucking planet into a desert. And it's going to happen so quick that it'll make your head swim, because the animal itself is the actual engine. The earth itself and the land that those animals exist on is like the car chassis. Without both of those components together, what you got is a fucking junkyard. That's what you have. Right, a whole bunch of rusted out cars that ain't going nowhere, ain't doing nobody a damn bit of good.
That's a really good metaphor.
So what he's doing is he's showing that Bitcoin, regenerative agriculture, and the ability to hook people up with investors and people that want to live on the land and get back to those kind of roots, he's kind of pulling all that together. And when I started my podcast, one of the things that I wanted to do was start talking more about regenerative agriculture, but it morphed and it started becoming more of a news show, which is fine. I mean, shit changes. You really can't do a damn thing about that, but be that as it may, I start seeing other people. There's like there's the whole Meshtadel concept is being put forth by at Soul Exporter and his son, Soul X Boy. They've been talking to Daniel Prince on his podcast, and he's been talking to other people that are getting into regenerative agriculture. So now let's move all the way to today. All right. So we started in 2015. I get into regen agriculture through various means. That ends up leading me to Bitcoin. That leads me to the rabbit hole. I spin down that son of a bitch and I pop out the other end. And what do I find? The same shit I left. Regenerative agriculture, people wanting to be back on the land. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? If you watch the movie Alice in Wonderland and she falls down that rabbit hole and she turns upside down midway through and she pops out and it's a completely different world, but it's still a world. It's not like some kind of dreamland. It's not like she's out in outer space. She's like literally in a forest. And it's like the same thing, only different. And that's literally how I got to be here. And I'm watching the same people. The other fascinating thing about it is that when I got to the other end of the rabbit hole, there's no real end to the rabbit hole. It's just that I'm in this world. What I started finding out almost immediately between 2015 and 2017 is that the Bitcoiners were reading the exact same books that the regen ag guys were reading. They were reading Nassim Taleb, screw that guy. They were reading it's not because of his book. It's because he turned into I don't know. We'll leave that there.
Whatever.
In either event, they're reading Nassim Taleb. They're talking about anti-fragility. They're talking about all the same stuff. And the Bitcoiners are reading the same books that the regen ag guys that I left were reading. And it's like a giant circle. And I've literally, I'm at that connection right now. I'm back where I started, only it's not a circle, it's a spiral. So I'm here. I'm down, but I'm in the same spot that I started up. It's just down or either up or whatever you want to say. But I'm finding this entire thing really fascinating. So I was watching Soul Exporter and Daniel Prince and all these guys talk about regen agriculture is really starting to get me excited. I mean, I was excited about just Bitcoin, but now I'm like looking at what can be done when you get Bitcoiner mindset and attach that to regen agriculture mindset. And holy shit, if the guys that are just losing their crap about climate and CO2 and all that kind of crap, if they would shut up for 10 minutes and learn about how soil actually works, they would find out that the reason we've got a goddamn carbon problem is because we've destroyed every square inch of the soil. It's a carbon sink, and we screwed it up. And now they're like, well, all the carbon's going into the ocean and it's acidifying the oceans. Yeah, damn right, you dumbass, because it's got nowhere else to go because Monsanto and Cargill and Arthur Daniels Midland and all the rest of these asswipes have been paying and lobbying for decades. And the result is destroyed soils. What's great? We can bring them all back, and we can bring them back within our lifetimes, and they will suck so much carbon out of the atmosphere that it will actually start cooling the planet.
Now, are you saying
that shit happened before?
Are you saying the carbon is getting pulled into the soil, or the carbon's getting pulled into the plants that grow out of the soil?
Plants.
Both.
Okay.
Right. So you've got plants in soil, and if you remember high school biology, they respire and they also photosynthesize.
Greg doesn't remember.
Photosynthesis is using sunlight as the energy source to take carbon dioxide and turn it into sugar. At night, the plant will eat some of that sugar and do what we all do. We respire, we respirate. And that doesn't mean just breathing. It means harvesting the energy that was put together with solar energy and carbon and harvesting that back out so that we can run our metabolic functions. Without that, you die, and you die instantly. All right, it's like if your brain stopped metabolizing, you got 3 minutes, and you're post-toasted. You're just done. You're done for the world, right? So the sugar that they don't eat, though, that's the interesting part. The sugar that the plants do not eat, they don't just store it. They do store a lot of it. That's what makes the plant mass. Trees, that's what the wood's made out of. It turns into lignin and all that kind of stuff. That's where you get the structure of the tree.
Ligma.
But even after all that's done, there's excess sugar left over. So what happens is that they throw it down into their roots, and their roots sweat it out. And they're not doing it just to get rid of it. They're doing it because they have a symbiotic relationship with all the critters in the soil. Fungi, bacteria, protozoa. Let's start just the three smallest ones: protozoa, bacteria, and fungi. As the tree or plant or grass, about 98% of all the world's plants has some kind of relationship with something else that ain't a plant, and it's in the soil. And when I say that it dumps sugar out, I'm not saying to think of it like a bag of your table sugar. There's 50,000 different kinds of sugar, the way that you can configure it. If you look at carbon like Lego blocks, they're all like the same kind of block, but as you start fitting them together, they can form almost anything. Sugar's the same way. There are certain critters in the soil that want mannose and not sucrose. There's other critters in the soil that want glucose and not dextrose, but the OSE on the ass end of all those words denotes it as a sugar. There's lactose, there's mannose, there's dextrose, there's glucose, there's all kinds of shit. There are sugars out there that we haven't even named, and each one of them have a specific chemical configuration. When a plant decides that it can exude, it doesn't mean that a plant can exude all of the possible sugar combinations, but there's a lot more than just a few, okay? Each one of these will attract a different critter. And each one of those critters will go and they'll chew on that sugar, and they will emit something in their poop that the tree actually needs, like being able to chelate manganese and into a form that the plant can use, whereas before it couldn't. So it's harvesting the work that the bacteria does by basically giving it candy.
So it's some kind of like we have the gut bacteria, right? Some kind of symbiosis like that. Yeah.
It's exactly like if you got rid of all your gut bacteria, like if you sterilized your gut, you'd be dead in a day. Yeah. There's no way that you can get the kind of nutrients that you need without all the flora that's in your body. Same thing with the soil. So you can literally look at the soil as the gut of the world. So what's happening though is that as that organism's eating and chewing on those sugars, it's not like the CO2 that's being like released it's not like what it poops out is pure CO2 as it digests sugar, like yeast turns it into alcohol and CO2. The CO2 gets a little trapped because it's in soil, right? But it also is converted into other things. So the carbon stays in the soil. When the Europeans came over to the United States, or came over to the Americas at the time, before they were United States, you had four.
Don't forget that
the Americas, as it was known at the time.
We made.
But you were talking about. We were talking about like 3 and 4 foot deep topsoil that was black as coal.
Really?
I dare you to go find any of it now, because the minute that shit got ripped up and got exposed to the atmosphere, the oxygen in the atmosphere burned off the carbon. Every time we plow fields, the oxygen in the atmosphere burns off the carbon, and we lose more carbon every single year. We used to have soils that were rated at somewhere, like as far as we can tell, there was probably topsoils that had somewhere between 8 and 13% carbon in the soil. You're lucky to be getting 3. All of that carbon has been released into the atmosphere. So all these people that are bitching about the oil, it's the oil industry. You have no clue. You had no fucking clue just how much carbon was actually released because we decided that it was a good idea to plow soil.
So how do you farm without plowing?
Seed drill, no-till, cover crops, and animals. And you do it. I would go through it all, but it would take way more time. It's sort of like it asked me to explain to you Bitcoin, everything that you need to know about it inside of a couple of minutes.
Explain to me Bitcoin, everything I need to know about it.
I can't do it. You've got to do the damn research. You've been we've all been here before. The complexity of what we're talking about when it comes to Bitcoin by itself it's astounding. That's why nobody ever leaves the rabbit hole. We can't get out because there's always something around the goddamn corner that's like, oh shit, that's pretty cool. I was going to leave, but I don't know. Stripper on the pole looks pretty damn cool. I didn't know that was here. Right. So it's the same thing with explaining what untapped growth is doing. And by the way, if you're also not following Modern T-Man at Modern T-Man on Twitter, he's actually the only Bitcoiner that lives anywhere close to me. Me and him actually get to go get coffee. It's amazing to just chill out with Modern T-Man because we live like 15 minutes away from each other.
He will be on the pod in February.
On Saturday. Do what?
He will be on the pod in February.
Nice. Yeah, he's a good guy. I like that guy a lot. I'm gonna go see. We're gonna have coffee on Saturday, but he would tell you the same thing. What we're talking about here, how animals interact with the land, how we don't have to plow the soil to be able to get the food that we need. And in fact, if we don't plow the soil and we do it in a different way, we'll actually end up with more food. The problem is that we're not really growing food, are we? if you were to strike out into a cornfield at harvest right now in Iowa, Oklahoma, North Texas, and you rip an ear of corn off a plant and think you're going to sink your teeth into a nice juicy morsel, good fucking luck. What it's going to taste like is chalk, because it's grown to make ethanol out of and or high fructose corn syrup. Almost 90% of the corn that you see growing is not food corn. And it's the same way with soybeans. It's the same way with, I'm not going to say wheat and barley, because that's okay, insofar that it goes to actually make bread. But most of the grain crops and bean crops that we grow, unless it's like sugar snap peas or green beans or something like that, if it's soybean, they're not making tofu out of it.
So you're okay with it going to make bread, but not okay to make beer?
No, you have to have barley to have beer. Don't take my barley away, bitch.
All right, fair enough.
That's like that.
You gotta kill those younglings.
Yep. And what's crazy too is even in my great grandparents, they were telling me that even tomatoes and stuff had started to taste different in their lifetimes, because it goes back to your soil as well, right? So if we're not doing a regenerative, nutrient dense soil, your food's not going to taste as good, because it's just a plant growing on whatever it can. And yeah, that was interesting to learn that. And then when you go down this rabbit hole a little bit, you see, oh, that's why, because we're just artificial nutrients or whatever they skate by feeding it.
I send you some tomatoes, Jennifer, so don't worry.
All right, brother.
And there's something to be about the nutrient dense, and Modern T-Man goes on about this quite a bit. I'm reading a book right now that's a collection of transcripts from a podcast, from a regenerative agriculture podcast. I don't read fiction anymore. I can't. I don't have time. I just want to read more soil books. I've read like 40 books about soil. I don't know why. It's one of those things that's fascinating. And it's just, to me, it's just as fascinating as Bitcoin. But there's this one part.
Only 40 books? That's it?
That's enough. And I got more to go. I got way more to go. I like, every time I look around, it's like one more book by Gabe Brown or Joel Salatin or something. And these guys just are a wealth of information. But going back to the nutrient dense thing, I'm reading this section in this book right now where this agricultural biochemist is talking about the chelation can be good, but it can also be bad, because chelation can turn something that wouldn't be available to a plant into something that the plant can use. But chelation can also, depending on how it's chelated, basically it just means combining with something else, like iron gets chelated with something else, and then that can go into like a plant. But iron can also be chelated with something else different, and it's not available to the plant. Glyphosate or Roundup chelates micronutrients in the soil in a way that makes them not available to the plant. You're not getting the manganese, the cobalt, you're not getting the copper. And these plants, every single Roundup, do what?
You're getting into genetically modified organisms and why it's important that glyphosate and Roundup take these nutrients.
Yeah, well, it's not that the way that Roundup generally works, and they don't really talk about it a lot, but you spray a plant with it and it kills the plant because it interferes with its ability to produce protein, its own proteins, for use in its own cells on a daily basis, not for us. So it kills that. It kills that permanently. If your plant is Roundup ready, then it's got a gene. Actually, it's got a whole host of mechanisms that basically, after the plant's ability to produce proteins in the real way that plants are supposed to do it gets destroyed, this mechanism picks up and is able to nurse that plant along from a different protein synthesis pathway. So the plant can still kind of do it to enough that it doesn't die, but all the weeds die because they were not Roundup ready. But on another note, the glyphosate itself just so happens to have an effect that they didn't really, even if they knew about it, they either covered it up or they didn't give a shit or whatever, but it has a tendency to chelate micronutrients that you need as nutrition in your food that coming up through the plants, doesn't make it available. And we wonder why, we have children's vitamins. That's why. I was like, find me children's vitamins in 1870. They weren't there. They didn't need them. I can't imagine why we need them now. So I think that the end of this story should just simply be that, thank God, regenerative agriculture and regenerative agriculture people and Bitcoiner people have collided. And I don't know what's going to shake out of this, but I know it's going to be awesome as fuck. That's all I can say.
Bitcoiners save the world.
We do shit. We just think about shit different. It's amazing how much we've been taught to just not think about stuff. Actually, I don't even know if we were taught to not think about stuff as much as we just were never engaged to actually think. And we got used to it.
It's an edge effect, right? Where Bitcoin meets permaculture.
Yeah, I guess it should probably talk about edge effect, unless you want to talk about something else first.
Get after it. Tell me about edge effect.
Edge effect. There is this notion in biology, agriculture, agroforestry, ecology in general, right? That if let's say I have a forest, and then that forest has an edge, or in other words, an end. The trees just stop growing. And then there's a prairie. Those are two completely different systems, but they share a common boundary. In that boundary, if you've ever been around a forest, and forest to savanna or prairie is the easiest thing to think about here. If you've ever walked to a forest across a whole bunch of grass, the second that you get to the edge of that forest, you have three things. You've got trees, you've got shrubs, and you've got grass. If you were back out, all you've got is grass. And if you walk in, all you've got is trees. At the edge, there's three things. You get one more thing at the edge because you have this collision of these two systems and they're talking to each other right at the edge. And that conversation causes more interest, as in, or as opposed to the grasslands just being silent and the forest just being silent. When they touch, they start talking. And that talking is a conversation. And listening to that conversation is one of the most interesting things that you'll ever listen to, but you actually have to stop and listen. So this happens at the edge of grass and then a pond. There's aquatic life and then there's prairie life, but right at the edge, you get grass and fish and a whole bunch of, little water critters, but you also get reeds and different kinds of plants that are growing, and they can't grow in the middle of the pond, but they also can't grow in the middle of the prairie. They have to be on this edge. So you either get grass or you get water, or right at the edge, you get three things. You get grass, you get water and all the stuff that's in it, and then you get this extra deal. So the edge effect is simply a situation that happens where the synergies between two systems, as they rub up against each other, make more than two. And that's what's important here. And watching regenerative agriculture and Bitcoin rub up against each other, I have no idea what's going to fall out of it. But it's going to be like Bitcoin, which does a lot, does enough, and you've got regenerative agriculture, put them together.
Citadel.
What's this one going to be? What is this going to look like? Just like that.
What's it gonna look like? I love it.
So basically, when you have two things rub up on each other, they create a baby.
That's true. Unless they're both strippers, which
Oh, let me
could
bring
be
the
cool
strippers
too,
back.
I suppose.
Yeah, let me
Robert
bring
knows
the
about the
strippers back.
strippers.
There we go.
Everybody
Yeah,
knows
bring him
strippers.
back. There we go.
Strippers and blow, man. Strippers and blow.
Now, you've been podcasting for a while and recently been talking about podcasting 2.0, Breeze, and getting streaming sats, getting paid for your content without actually having to do sponsorship like we do. What have you been finding out as you explored that new realm?
It's an interesting situation because my one thing is that was it Saturday night my lightning node went down. It just decided to give me the finger and run off with a junkie or something like that.
I'm well aware. We have lightning channels together. They were down.
They were down. Yeah.
As everybody can attest here, that I never pay attention to my lightning channels.
Yeah, right.
I pay attention to your lightning channel until I couldn't. But my node is now back up and safe, and everything came back, which that was scared the piss out of me, man. But I have a few listeners that are streaming me sats when I release a new show. And because it's like I'm looking at my metrics because I haven't put out a show since Friday, right? Here it is on Thursday. So we're like, what, 5-6 days, past me, having any kind of new content out. And what I found is that when I look at metrics on SoundCloud, which is where I keep my files hosted, I'm getting like a lot of listens. But the only time that I actually get sat streamed to me is when I release new content. And I think what that is not because, I'm going to take it over to my other podcast app where I can stream this guy's sats. I think what it is that they're always using that app, and they're really ever only going to stream me sats when they go, oh shit, a new one. I've already heard all the rest of the ones, so I'm not playing those again. So I'll play the new one. So I haven't had sats streamed to me since the last episode. However, on SoundCloud, people have been listening all through the weekend, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and I don't get dick from it, which is fine.
You like the dick, though.
I don't want to.
You want to get it.
I don't want to sound like it's like, hey man, listen to my show, give me money. As much as I find it fascinating that there's a lot more people on the legacy podcast system than there is on podcasting 2.0.
It's fresh.
And it's very fresh. And it would behoove us to, I don't know, tell people to go get podcasting 2.0 stuff. Just a thought.
What is that
Maybe
stuff?
we should do some free advertising for them.
Other than Breeze, what are we talking about?
What the hell's the name of that thing? I was just listening to a podcast where Matt Odell was talking to Princey, and he said the name of the podcast or the website like 15 times, and I can never remember the name. It's like, I think it's newpodcastapp.com. Hold on.
I think it was matu.com.
It might have been.
I don't think that's it. Anyway, this entire the whole podcast 2.0 thing is a kind of, I guess, a brainchild of Adam Curry. I don't know if you.
It's an Indian.
Pretty sure
dish.
everybody here's heard of Adam Curry.
Steph's older brother.
Yeah.
Okay. Because
I usually get the basil curry, but
so him and some people have basically kind of hooked up with the guy, some guys over at Sphinx, and since then the idea of podcasting 2.0 has kind of like really started taking hold, or not actually, I guess getting some legs beneath it and walking around and doing shit and reaching for things. So it's the ability to take an RSS feed, which is like when I have my podcast. When I guess Monday is when I'll do it, like my next podcast. When I take that and I upload it to SoundCloud, where it's hosted, anybody that has the RSS feed, which is like a web address or a URL for all the shit on where I'm hosting my podcast, you'll like, if you get that line of code, which looks a lot like a regular old URL, and you paste it into an RSS feeder, or if you're using a podcast app and you've subscribed to the show, you're actually leveraging the RSS feed, but you'll never see it. You don't need to know that it's happening because it all happened in the background. Well, podcasting 2.0, I take my RSS feed as it's given to me from SoundCloud, and I copy the line of code or the address, and I take it and I drop it over into a website over Adam Curry's. I want to say, I can't remember the name of that. God damn it! I wish I knew we were going to talk about this and I'd have it prepped. I don't know the site, but you drop the RSS feed in there and they change it, and they say, "What's your Lightning node address and what's your RSS feed?" And they take the RSS feed and they chelate it with your Lightning address. And once that's done, it gets sucked up into any podcasting 2.0 app. And if you're using one, then you have the chance to stream me sats, and you don't have to do anything other than listen to the podcast. And while you're listening to it, if you're streaming, if you say, "Hey, I want to give this guy 1 sat per minute," it's going to go to me and nobody else. It's not going to accidentally go to somebody else's podcasting 2.0 app because you're on my RSS feed, which was chelated with my Lightning address. My Lightning node is like literally right over there. It's a little box, not like that big, and it streams right into my node. Nobody is in a position to be able to capture those satoshis but me. So that again is another edge effect, because now I've got Bitcoin, I've got a podcast, I've got a Lightning node, and all of these things are rubbing up against each other, and it's caused me to be able to spend $300 on a Lightning node and have somebody I've never known stream me sats while I stream them my dulcet tones. So we're in a really brave new world, man, and it's just really exciting.
All right. Now, I know that Artie's been dying to ask you a question, so I'm going to give the floor to him here.
Can't Labra do it? He does a better RD than me.
No, please, Hardy. Go ahead, please. Mate.
Okay, Dave. This is always my question. If the meme factory did exist, which one of the meme factory would you like? Which one would you retweet? And which one would you mute?
Oh, like from like you guys, which of you guys I'd retweet and which of you I'd mute? Oh man, that's like picking. It's like picking children, man, from a burning house. That's not fair.
Yes.
All right.
Nobody said it'd be fair.
All right. Okay, so let's do the retweet one first. I retweet Greg pretty much more than anybody else, so I'm going to pick Greg for that one.
Boo.
Who would I mute? Come on, man, don't do this to me.
Mute me.
Yellow.
It's okay. Okay.
Yellow. It's Yellow. I'd mute the shit out of Yellow just to have some fun. And then what was the second one? There was follow or
and like.
Retweet, mute. Oh, and like. I don't like any of y'all. Y'all suck.
That's the right answer.
That's the right
Share
answer.
Force. Gonna go with Share Force.
All
Let's
right.
go.
Woo. All right. Now, if anybody's paying attention tonight, liked what you were talking about, do you have any books you might recommend, or any podcasts you might recommend?
Yeah, Survival Podcast with Jack Spirico. It's the Survival Podcast. Read anything. What's the name? I can't remember the name of the book. Gabe Brown is also known as Farmer Gabe Brown. That's Gabe and the color brown. He's one of the first cats. I think he's out of South, I want to say South Dakota. He's one of the first cats in big ag that started looking completely different at the way that he was going to continue to do agriculture. I mean, talk about corn and grain farmer. He's now in his 70s, I'm pretty sure. He started changing the way he was doing agriculture because of what he was learning about the soil 30 years ago. He's one of the pioneers of looking at soil and agriculture as a farmer, as somebody who makes his living as a farmer and not as an academic telling farmers what they should do, even though these academics have never farmed a day in their life. Neither have I either, but so I'm never going to tell a farmer what the fuck to do. I'm like trying to learn everything that I can. So Gabe Brown, anything from Joel Salatin. Joel Salatin is a farmer he's either in Virginia or West Virginia. I can't remember which. He has a completely regenerative farm. Curtis Stone. He is a YouTuber, and if you go back and look at his old stuff, it's Urban Farmer Curtis Stone. He's one of the first guys that I started listening or watching his videos about farming in an urban environment, like front lawn, back lawn. He would rent people's front lawns and their back lawns and grow shit on it, and he'd pay their water bill and take all the produce and sell it at farmers markets and in grocery stores. So he didn't actually have to buy the land. He would just rent his neighbor's property, and he would he would till. He doesn't till anymore, but when he first started, he'd till it, kill all the grass, plant row crops, harvest lettuce and greens and shit. And it was like actually an amazing kind of model because he wasn't paying for the land, and he did really well. So Urban Farmer Curtis Stone. Who else? One book. One Straw Revolution. I cannot pronounce nor can I spell the name of the Japanese author, but One Straw Revolution will blow your socks off. And I just got finished reading, again, cannot remember the name of the author, For the Love of Soil. It's deep. It's a thick tome, but it's fascinating. Last one that I'll mention is Teaming with Fungi. And that's spelled Teaming. Teaming with this play on words. Teaming as in like oodles of, but it's teamwork, whatever. I think the author's name is Lowenfels, but it's Teaming with Fungi. He's also got Teaming with Nutrients and Teaming with Bacteria. The fungi book is really good. And then read Mycelium Running from Paul Stamets. That book will kill you.
Stamets
You'll read
great.
that book and go, what the hell have we been doing? By the time I even got to that book, I already knew a shitload of stuff. And I read that book and I'm like, I'm surprised we're all still alive. I literally am surprised that we haven't killed ourselves. And it does not mean that you got to stop, driving around in your car. It doesn't mean that you can't run your heat in the winter. All that is bullshit. Anybody who tells you that crap lying through their damn nose. What we've done is destroyed the ability of the earth to take that carbon up because we've destroyed the gut of the world.
What do you think it's going to take, like for example with Bitcoin, right? When you talk about like hyper Bitcoinization, a lot of times I think about it, I'm like, you're not going to get the whole world to just start studying Austrian economics versus Keynesian economics, and like it's just gonna kind of happen. There might be some type of event that happens, whether that's or hyperinflation or something that happens, and people make that switch, and then they just kind of don't even realize it, and now they're using Bitcoin instead of using fiat. Do you think there's going to be something like that? Like what do you think it's going to take to happen to have a regenerative ag world? Is it going to be something along that lines, do you think? Or how do you foresee that happening?
Multiple farm foreclosures on broad scale or broad acre scale situations. Here's what I mean by that. we're at a place where chemical agriculture is just not going to be able to grow another damn thing. Could be 10 years, could be 20, but we're coming there and we're coming fast. And at one point or another, somebody somewhere in the Midwest is going to put a corn seed in the ground and they're going to put all the same shit on it, and it's just not going to grow. And when that happens 4 times in a row, they're going to sell that property for dirt cheap. And here comes Modern T-Man, and here comes Untapped Growth that'll pick that shit up at auction for pennies an acre because it's trash land, and they'll look at it and go, I know what I can do to this thing in 5 years. You get a whole shitload of people that want to get out of the cities, and all of a sudden everybody's being taught how to do like agriculture, like what we're doing now, like talking about it and getting people interested in it. By the time that shit starts happening, because it will happen, and we're talking thousands, and that like 1,000-acre parcels of land will literally go for $100, because modern agriculture, industrial agriculture, they can't think this way. All we literally have to do is put animals back on it, and for the time being, until grass can start growing back on that shit, yes, we will have to import like hay and stuff like that. This can all be done. It doesn't mean that it's easy, and it certainly doesn't mean that it's going to happen overnight, but you're going to see a shit ton of cheap land that nobody can do anything with. You're going to see a shit ton of Bitcoiners that want to get out of cities and get back onto the land. And you're going to have educators like Modern T-Man and Untapped Growth, and the spawn that they're going to come up with, like the people that they teach are going to start putting the word in the street, and then they're going to start teaching people. And in 10 years, you'll have a fuck ton of these people walking around going, I got Bitcoin, I want land, and this land is like going up for sale at the bank cheap, and I know exactly what to do with it.
Are you seeing that like on a small scale? You know, like for example, with Bitcoin, sometimes the signal is just the price, right? It's like, okay, you got a Steve Hanke out there who's been saying Bitcoin's going to zero for 8 years. You know, he said it's going to zero when the price is at like $100, and now it's $60-something thousand. So it's like, obviously he's wrong, and like there's some signal there. Are you seeing that too? Like that, you know, regenerative ag guys are coming in and are switching up farms from, you know, from the chemical farms to more regenerative ag farms now?
Yeah, it takes a while, and a while can, depending on what they do, it can be anywhere between start seeing results in 3 years to start seeing results in 5 years, but they'll start seeing results. And then if they continue on the track, those results get better every harvest. And yet still, your neighbor, like if like, let's say that I got 1,000 acres and I grow, I don't know, let's say that I'm still doing like commodity ag, but I'm doing it in a regenerative way. So I'm still selling corn, and it's probably not food corn, but I'm doing it regeneratively. After 3 years, I will start matching the kind of bushel output that my chemical farmer neighbor will be doing. But I'm not putting any inputs. I'm not buying fertilizer. I'm not buying pesticides. I'm not buying 3 things. And each one of those things that I buy, I got to apply with the tractor, which means I don't have to pay for that diesel. I don't have to pay for the herbicide diesel. I don't have to pay for whatever the fuck this is diesel. I don't have to run my tractor 3 times. And then I don't have the maintenance cost because I didn't have to run my tractor 3 times. See what I'm saying? So now I'm saving money on not having to buy 3 things, not having to apply it 3 times, and saving money on how much my tractor has to be fixed because it's not actually in the field anymore. Not like it was. So if I get the exact same results as my chemical neighbor farmer, I'm still ahead of that asshole because I didn't have to buy anything except the seed, right? So now it gets better and better. And yet that chemical farmer will still look at you like you were crazy. They're like just Joel, like a Keynesian economist, right? Yeah, they can't understand it. They can't wrap their head around it. Even if they see the results for themselves, they'll be like, you're insane. And then they just walk away and they do the same shit that they did last year and then wonder why their soil's even worse, why their bushel counts are going down, why they're having to pay more for fertilizer and then apply more fertilizer that they're paying more for anyway. It's bizarre.
Yeah, like their fertilizer is basically inflation.
Kind of.
It's killing them. They don't even realize it.
Yeah, the thing is bad. It's a bad situation because farmers for 70 years since post World War II is when we got chemical fertilizers because they couldn't make bombs anymore. But the same shit that goes into fertilizers also happens to be very explosive. So they just reapplied it to the farm and said, you got to buy bags of this shit. If you don't buy bags of this shit, you won't survive. And people bought it hook, line, and sinker, and now they're on the treadmill of continuously having to apply it until we get to a point where that last application doesn't do shit. And then all of a sudden the Bitcoiners come in and say, I got a low time preference. I can wait 15 years. I can do this in 10. I can look at this as a 5-year project and bring it back to life, and it'll happen. That's what's gonna, and I believe that that's what's gonna happen.
Yeah, it sounds
It
like
makes you wonder too, if like there's
Go
an
ahead.
industrial like cattle ranch, or not, it's not even a ranch then, but you get what I'm saying. If you could take their waste and spread it on the land constantly, well, if that would speed up the process, if that's an option.
It can, but what you're going to end up doing is paying for trucking cost. Yeah. And and you can say look, when we took the animals off the land, we made a mess because now they're shitting in one place. The cow is designed as a solar powered grass eating shitting machine that fertilizes everywhere it goes. And what did we do? We stuck them all in the same place. And when you have too much of anything, it sucks. If I have too many hookers and coke, it's probably going to kill me. If I got a cow that shits in the exact same place, it's going to kill that land. If you spread it out, there's always a sign. There's always a sign in a redneck bar somewhere that says, love is like manure. It's no good unless you spread it around. I ain't lying. If you keep it all piled up in one spot, it's no longer useful. It's actually it's a liability, but it's like a chemical waste dump.
That's why we got to let Labra go outside more often.
Yep.
And gentlemen, I hate to tell you this, but I am coming to the time that I need to really start thinking about going to dinner. My kids got to go to school tomorrow.
Yep.
I don't know how long y'all normally go, but
nope,
yeah,
we're at the end here.
My wife is probably going to break through the glass on that door and tell me to fuck off or come to dinner or leave. So, is there? How y'all want to wrap this up?
I think that's it, David. I think we're just we're all really happy that you came on here. I think you've enlightened me, if not anybody else.
Oh, for sure.
Really appreciate the content. So I'll be listening to Bitcoin and why don't you tell everybody who's paying attention where they can find you? It'll also be in the show notes, but go ahead. And then we'll wrap it.
Bitcoin and is the name of the podcast. I am David Bennett and None Ya Business on Twitter. However, that Twitter handle is actually at BENND77. This is probably the worst Twitter handle on the planet. Don't ask me why. It was just back in 2011 when this shit came up. I'm like, well, I'll test out Twitter, and I set up an account, and I don't know why I picked that one, but I did, and I left Twitter alone for like years, and then picked it back up because I got into Bitcoin. Bitcoin brought me back to Twitter. So BENND77 on Twitter. Bitcoin and is the podcast, and yeah, there you go, man.
Appreciate your time, David.
I will read you the news. If you want to know what the fuck's going on in Bitcoin, I will read you the news.
Sounds
Appreciate
good, David.
your time, David.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was
Everybody have a
awesome.
good night.
Thank you.
Good night, guys.
Good night, y'all.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks for having me. I will
Good night,
come
man.
back anytime you guys want to. This is fun.
Woohoo!
I really